I'm a typography teacher, so take this with a grain of salt. But really, typography is the reason that graphic design exists. It all started off with communicating ideas and knowledge. Here we have the Gutenberg Bible, which was essentially designed and manufactured to replace handwriting. But the purpose of that handwriting was to communicate the content of the Holy Bible, which is what the Gutenberg Bible, that first major printing job in Europe, was all about. Soon after that, other kinds of knowledge started being spread by printing, by typography. Here we have an example of a book about astronomy/astrology. At that point, there was not much difference between them. Here we have a printed book in Arabic on Arabic grammar. This is the kind of printing that began and quickly spread throughout Europe during the Renaissance. When we get to the Industrial Revolution, around 1800, we get an explosion of typefaces. As surplus production and increased leisure led to a need for advertising to absorb that excess production capacity. And here we have an example of many kind of different typefaces, all set-centered, not terribly inspired graphic design, but a lot of interesting typefaces, even if they don't necessarily go well together. Art and culture reacted against the Victorian excesses while adopting some aspects of it. Here we have a paste-up by Filippo Marinetti, the founder of Futurism, and you can see that by using paste-up, he has everything on angles, so it's not printed on a printing press, it's reproduced by photolithography. Here we have an example of Dada typography, where, again, things were pasted up and then reproduced photolithographically. And Dada was really a rejection of both classical and of consumerism, the kind of things that were burgeoning in Europe at the end of the 1800s. So this is early 20th century work. Here we have an example of Distill, and this is early modular work, and you can see that all the letters are really manufactured. They're not an existing typeface. They're made out of geometric forms. The modernist movement moved type to a more functional, grid-based simplicity. And an early proponent and really founder of this kind of design was Jan Tschichold, a very important designer in the 20th century. And you can see that it's very simple and it's very well organized. There's an underlying grid working here, and those colored bars are not just there for appearance, they're there to help organize the information. Here's a later example, Josef Müller-Brockmann, who made many concert posters that represent the Swiss International style, which is really built off the kind of work that Tschichold was doing. Then the postmodern movement led to experimental uses of type. Here we have Catherine McCoy's poster for the graduate program in design at Cranbrook, and this is in the early days of people being able to produce design themselves on personal computers rather than sending out to a type shop and ordering type. So it led to a lot more ability to explore and experiment. Here we have an example of work by Chris Ashworth, and this, if you like, is a reaction against the kind of perfection that computers would do. You know, if we look back at the Catherine McCoy, we'd see all the baselines are perfectly horizontal and everything's aligned perfectly vertically. This is by hand, you can produce work that is different, more striking than what is produced by the computer. Neville Brody, a similar kind of time, is also doing interesting things. Now, this is all done on the computer, but he's going against that very straightforward way of approaching things and making the type bounce, as it says, and a much more intuitive way of designing than you'd get from the Swiss grid-based design. And here's an example of a website, and you can see that images are important here. Type is still an important part of the image, and in the actual website, those images you see are actually animations. They're videos of seagulls at work. However, the type also continues to be the main way that information is communicated. And most type, most letters, most words are used for communication. And they work together with display type to create interesting union of work. Here's an example from the year 2000, and it is very much grid-based. It's very simple, but it's really visually effective, and it leads you to read the material inside, maybe more than just look at it, though, it's nice to look at. Here's a book from John Kane's Type Primer, and again, the information is the most important thing, but the layout of the page contributes to your interest in reading it. This is from a website called Butterick's Practical Typography. Very good website, lots of interesting and useful information on typography there. But again, it is designed carefully and well designed to present that information with a suitable hierarchy, nothing very dramatic, but an effective way to present information. This is a spread from Rolling Stone magazine, and again, it's an interview, and you can see that it looks good, but the main purpose of this is to present the information that is the interview itself. So at OCAD, we deal with both these things. We deal with type as visual. We learn the conventions of typography and how it communicates language and works in a layout. We also learn how it works visually to create new modes of typographic communication, and that's the kind of things that students develop here. And really, I think that sums it up. And I'll say once again, typography, it's the most important part of graphic design.